gaping wide open!
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rev Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing the masterpiece that is Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. But before we do get into the details of the review, make sure to drop a like, comment and subscribe. I appreciate any kind of support. And now, without further delay, let's get into the review.
Greetings, Cyborg.
Show yourself.
The story of Metal Gear Rising wraps itself up perfectly within 5 to 6 hours of playtime. Usually, I'm not a fan of a game with a short story, but this game conveys its message and setting perfectly to the audience, to the point where I was genuinely invested in every event in the game and the very grounded and realistic story it was trying to convey. I'm still in awe at how the world of Metal Gear manages to be so weird and wacky whilst also maintaining that serious status. I really enjoy the fact they can perfectly blend the funny and weird aspects of this strange world with the much more depressing and realistic elements. It's a perfect blend between humorous and serious, and I really like that. And out of respect for this game's brilliant story, I will not be spoiling anything about it, as even though the game did come out in 2013, I would much prefer to speak about my thoughts on the story as a whole, rather than spoiling it for the people who haven't had the chance to play this brilliant game yet. As trust me, this is an experience you will not forget if you do choose to play it after watching this review. So what I can say about the story for this game is I really enjoyed how everything was wrapped up within a few hours. The ending really did leave me itching for more, but after a few more days and a lot of thoughts, I didn't really think that this masterpiece needed a sequel, as it already conveyed its message perfectly without leaving too much open. Though it is the Metal Gear franchise, so there's many ways that a mainline game in the future could, touch on certain events after this game, or maybe, have little references to it. If you don't know, there is a remake for currently there's a remake that will be coming out, I think, this year or next year for a Metal Gear game. But the thing is, Hideo Kojima, the producer and director, he is no longer involved with Konami, so I don't know what the direction of the series will be in the future, but hopefully one day we can see an expansion of the story without it needing to be a direct sequel. Another thing I enjoyed involving the story was the characters. The cast of MGR is very diverse, but without feeling forced. Every single character, whether it was a main, a side, or a villain, were very well written and likeable. The main character, Raiden, aka Jack, is one of my favourite protagonists of all time, and I've really enjoyed his story, especially knowing him from the previous games. It's nice to finally see a conclusion to a well-written character's inner turmoil. You have Jack, who is just kind of struggling with his past and doesn't really know what his current identity is, and that's kind of solved in this game. I'm not going to get into it because that will spoil his whole entire backstory and everything for players that have either heard of his story before but haven't heard of his conclusion, or players that want to get into Metal Gear. Honestly, one of the best protagonists of all time. Next, what about the villains? Well, of course, villains are unlikable by nature, but you can actually find them quite likable in this game because they're quite realistic, and even though they are very evil, some of them, you can understand why they're doing what they're doing, what their goals are, and they're very realistic villains to the point where you can feel sorry for some of them, you understand why they're doing it, and some of them feel justified, if I'm being honest. And that's very realistic because a lot of games they try to make villains this cartoonishly evil type thing, and I don't really like that. I like a good, realistic villain that you can both hate and like at the same time. There's also side characters in this game, and some of them are side characters in this game specifically, but they're much more focused on in other games. But in this, I like the fact that all of the side characters are still enjoyable, and even the ones that are only in the game for a few minutes are very, very well written in my opinion, and I enjoyed meeting them, talking to them, and killing them. But yeah, we won't get into that. The message behind Metal Gear Rising is also still relevant today. War will always be a big money maker, and in fact, in the harsh reality that we live in, it's also helped us to progress and evolve to the point where we are today. War is never a good thing by any means. Fighting for a country that doesn't exactly care about you, and risking the lives of innocents is pure evil, but sadly sometimes for the sake of the economy and evolution, it seems to be a necessary evil in some cases, and that's what this game is trying to convey, is that yes, sport is completely evil, but it's not completely useless like people seem to think it is, because it does help the economy, but is it worth it? That's kind of what this game is trying to convey, and I think that's a brilliant message, and it's a very tricky one too, that I don't really see many modern games touching on that subject. So yeah, that is the story of Metal Gear Rising, sorry, and I think it's brilliant, so let's move on to the next one. Now the gameplay is where this game really starts to shine, with super fluid movement and very immersive and engaging cyborg samurai combat. One of the most unique features in this game is its combat, and let me say right now, holy shit is the combat brilliant, but that's not to say it's perfect, so let's get into it. Starting off in the movement, let's talk about the Ninja Run ability. Using the Ninja Run, which is used by holding down either Shift on keyboard or mouse, or R1 or RB depending on what controller you're using. In this mode, Raiden's movement speed is increased, and he will also automatically clear and jump over obstacles as well as slide underneath them. This made movement very fun and fluid. It wasn't just useful, and it also looks like awesome too. It looked so goddamn cool, especially in certain scenes where you're being chased or you have to clear certain objects to get to a certain location, or you're running away from something. It was extremely fun to use, very easy to use, and kind of just made the game a whole lot more fluid and fun to play. The combat is also easy to pick up but hard to master. In this footage you're currently seeing, I was trying to hone my non-existent skills, and that's because I only really learned how to parry perfectly later on in the game. This is my second playthrough you're seeing right now, and since the combat tutorial was awful, I didn't really know how things works properly, and a lot of players complained about this back in the day and still are complaining, is that the tutorial is a bit too hard to understand and doesn't really make any sense. But to be honest, once you pick up the skills, it's fine, I don't really care. It probably would have been better for them not to add a tutorial at that point, because like you might as well just teach yourself how to parry and do all of these other mechanics. I also did find it hard sometimes since there is no dodge button in the game, but there is an ability that you unlock later on called Defensive Stance that sort of mimics a dodge, but it is harder to trigger. So let's just get into the depths of the combat. I won't talk about some parts because it will spoil later parts of the game, but I will talk about the basic side of the combat. Now on to the most unique part of this game, which is Blade Mode. A slow motion hack and slash mechanic that's super satisfying and pretty easy to trigger. To use Blade Mode you need to have your FC bar completely full. You then have to hold down a button, it could be any type of button, depending on what platform you're playing on, to go into slow motion mode. Then you can slash your blade in any direction you want to quite literally cut your enemies to pieces. You can literally cut human enemies to pieces, robots to pieces, helicopters to pieces, massive mechs to pieces. There is so many mechanics hidden within this as well, where you have to hit a certain area and you can grab their arms and you have to collect 50 arms or something like that. And there's also these red boxes where if you slash them you can refill your FC bar, which is brilliant. I found it extremely fun and very engaging and extremely unique. Honestly, the combat in this game is brilliant. By no means is it perfect, and there were some moments where the combat did feel a bit janky, but overall the combat was amazing, and I don't think there will ever be a game that's like this again, unless, there's a sequel one day, but I don't honestly think anything could ever come close to this combat system again, because it was super fun and I really enjoyed it. You can also use other weapons in combat such as rocket launchers and grenades, but honestly I hardly used either of these unless I was dealing with helicopters and enemies that were further away. You can also play this game stealthy if you really want to, but let's be real, literally who the fuck is going to do that? You're literally playing as a samurai in an action game where you can slice through people like they're pieces of butter, and you can quite literally cut their bullets in half as you're running at them. So I don't know why you would want to go stealthy, but you can do that if you want to. I did try to go into it as a stealth game at first just to see if I could try to, but no, I failed miserably. I was just too excited to kill my enemies in the most overdramatic way possible, whilst alerting every single enemy in the area. So that was super fun. I love the combat in this game, though I will say some of the bosses, well, I would say one or two bosses in specific were quite janky. One of them was way too easy, but he kind of hyped himself up to be much harder than he actually was in the end. Probably one of the easiest bosses I've ever defeated in any game ever. But you know, let's not talk about that. Let's move on from this topic and go to the final topic. So how about the music? Well, honestly, the soundtrack in this game is quite literally the best original video game OST I've ever heard. I don't even think there's a single game that can beat this game's soundtrack. There is literally zero competition. Every single track in this game had a hidden meaning to it, and was only played once in the game, other than specific battle themes, aka basic battle themes, and you know, normal scenery music, dungeon music, whatever it is. But every single boss had their own song that was suited to them. And if you listen to the lyrics of each and every one of these songs, they actually fit the moment you're currently in, the boss you're fighting, and they're very personal to the characters you're fighting, especially the main villains. Every single track in this game has a meaning behind it and is placed perfectly within the game, where you're just like, holy shit, is this game epic? And I hate saying the word epic, but this game is absolutely epic when it comes to the different moments where the beat drops and now those lyrics hit in. Because at first, when you're fighting a boss, the music starts off as like the instrumental version. Then when you get to like the climax of the boss or the midpoint, the music all of a sudden changes rapidly and it goes to the vocalistic version of that track. Because if you don't know, every single track in this game is a vocal track. It's all heavy metal, rock, variations of rock. It is brilliant and I absolutely love it, and I don't think there will be a game that I absolutely adore the soundtrack of as much as this game ever. I genuinely thought Persona had a brilliant soundtrack, the Trail series, the East series, Neo The World Ends With You, and Final Fantasy, and all of these franchises, I thought they had brilliant soundtracks, but they don't even come close to this game, and that is absolutely phenomenal in my opinion, and that is the main selling point for this game. For me personally, this game is the soundtrack and how it complements not only the gameplay, but the moments you're in, the story, the characters. The music is part of this. It is a big part of this game, and without it, it wouldn't be as great as it is. And I do think this game's soundtrack will go on to be one of the most legendary soundtracks I've ever heard, and that will be my final topic. So let's move on to the final verdict. I'm getting too absorbed into the music, so let's move on to the final verdict. Overall, I will never forget my time with Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, as it was an experience that I don't think I ever can forget. It's something I've never experienced before. I had played the game a few years ago when I was younger, never completed it though, and I didn't remember enough of it to know how goddamn good it was, but I'm glad I picked it up again and played it, because if I didn't play this game, I think I would view games in a very different light. Because playing this has made me realize many other things about games with the little details they add, and it's really made me want to pursue reviewing games as an actual hobby, something to do every day. I really want to just keep making reviews and make them high quality, and that's because of this game. I really enjoy it. The soundtrack is perfect, the characters are really well written, and the story is absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to be honest and give this game a brilliantly perfect 10 out of 10, because this game is genuinely perfect in my opinion. Of course it's got flaws, so you might say, well, that's not perfect, but I can ignore the flaws, I can look past them, because every other thing that's great makes up for the bad parts, like the bad tutorial and the janky combat in places. I can ignore those because everything else is fixed by the music, the story, the characters. I can look past every bad aspect, and I just love this game, and I really hope there will be a game like this again in the future. I doubt there will be, but we'll just have to see. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the review, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Give me some feedback in the comments. I'm very much open to constructive feedback. Anything you want in the comments, future reviews, guides. If you want me to play a gacha game, just let me know in the comments and I will be sure to respond, and I'll see you in the next one.